Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Oweteegee is a question I get a lot. What does that actually mean? And it's basically the pronunciation of the letters Oweteegee, off the grid, and also Omega Tri G clef, which is my logo there, that symbol. And that basically means harmony within, which is why that's printed underneath that. So this is part of the Harmony Within series that Oweteegee is offering through YouTube to you for candid conversations about things that are off the grid to most self-help, addiction, mental or emotional assistance, I'll say, in videos. This is for that purpose. And I come to you from off the grid in a location that is wooded, and I do this so I can be anonymous. I respect anonymity, and I do truly believe that it is an essential tool in anyone's healing, because I think it goes to trust. And I'm going to trust you with my deep darkies and those who recognize my voice. Hi. It's all about respect, because that's what trust is. So anyone who writes to me in my comments or asks me a question, if I use you for an example, I won't use your name, but I will speak directly to you, which is to any viewer, about the situation and how I see it, which is just another voice in the dark, which is why I want to remain that way. And I'm not doing this for any other purpose than to put my experience out there so that nobody else has to go through the stuff that I did growing up, the questions, the darkness, the limbo. And I think it's important that people know themselves, and truth is essential to that. So we'll be examining all of these things, but I think it's important to understand that you have support. That is your circle. That's where you're at, your location. And that's why my logo has a circle. And inside of it is a thick triangle. And that is a unbreakable bond. The triangle is one of the strongest symbols. And that is you, your body, your mind, and your spirit. And the edges touch on that circle. So that reinforces not only the circle to the triangle, but also the triangle to the circle, where you're at, the people you're with, where you choose to do with your life in this time. And the G clef is a musical symbol that appears on music paper to let everyone know what part of the orchestra is playing in those frequencies. And I think frequency is important because of a thing called range. And range, I think, goes to the depth of sound, octaves. And this is important when thinking about healing, because you never stay the same. They talk about complacency a lot in AA meetings and such, but you're never actually in limbo and not moving in one direction or the other. You're either spiraling up or you're spiraling down, you know? Like the energy that moves up and down the DNA changes. Unlock your different potentials. So without going too far down the rabbit hole, I just wanted to introduce basically what this channel is about. At least in this series, it's going to focus on harmony within and all the aspects of that. I'm going to begin with truth, because truth is the first and only thing that you come to when you're born. It's the first thing that you have. The fact of the matter is, or the truth is, that when you're born, truth is born for you. It is born with you. It is an individual truth that you can share with others, give to others freely. It's not something you can touch. It's not something you can point at. It's not something that you can necessarily feed or cultivate completely on your own. The truth is something that you share with other people's experience. And when you're born, you're giving truths. Your mother named you your name, and you grow up believing in that name, and so you essentially become that name. Well, events happen And truth is what you use as your first person perspective or your paradigm of that situation. And when many people witness something together, they share that same truth, but from different perspectives. And I think it's important to examine this because your truth is what you believe, and it's based on your perspective. A separate reality that you have to yourself that exists within another reality that you share with others, and they have their own reality with them too. So there is a general truth. The car hit the building, and everyone saw it. But how, why, the emotional reaction, and whether it was impactful enough to cause rumination or shifting back and forth in time, reflecting and then projecting, that can become very distracting. And truth is what's hanging in the balance. So it's also an extremely important thing because it gives way to belief. And belief is a spiritual concept. You cannot point to any part of your body and say this is where the truth comes from. Most people say it comes from the heart. The heart's a spiritual concept as well. And also, anyone who would compare the human body to an animal's body, animals don't have truth. They have survival. They have learned behaviors. They have reflection in terms of their body's ability to experience the world. But they don't become alcoholics or drug addicts if they believe negative things about themselves. They don't tend to believe things about themselves. They just be all the time. And so what you believe comes from your truth. And your personal truth is you. And in life, sometimes we just accept truth for fact. There's a difference between truth and fact. But not all facts are true. And that's important to believe too. And without getting too confusing with that, let me just say that truth is not black or white. You know? I mean, it can be. Yes, that there is an oak tree. That is a black and white truth. But if you come back the next day and it's cut, who cut it down? If no one witnessed it, where is the truth then? Another example of the power of truth is if you grow up believing that you can accomplish anything in the world and you have the right-minded body and ability to do it, will you accomplish it? Most likely. But if you grew up believing that you can't accomplish anything, if your truth is that you can't do it, you can't stick to it, you're not worth the time, then your truth is a lie. But it still has the same power of belief in it. And if there's not a spiritual place that shows the power of faith, that's faith that you suck and you manifest it. It's like your soul's devil's advocate to the success and the happiness in your own life. And just stopping that process, doing nothing to injure yourself, isn't good enough. Because the truth is that you can also be your own advocate, your higher self's advocate. If you have a spiritual higher power, which is a place to put that faith and trust and truth into, it will become your truth. And we'll examine truth in fuller detail when we get into the steps. Because the steps are where we separate what the gray areas are and the black and the white. Because I do truly believe that we come from a place of vast possibilities, a combination of all colors, that through dripping down onto the white page of this existence, we make a mark. And we write out our lives, our stories, and that truth I was talking about. And the great thing is that recovery is all about going back and crossing out parts and rewriting that script. And your truth is very important. And I'll get into those dynamics because it's not only about what you believe, but what people around you will let you believe. Because remember, I talked about shared truths. And this is important when talking about healing. Addiction is a very isolating place. Mental health has a disease where isolation is the main symptom. So disconnection and isolation are prominent players in truth and its power to destroy or build and never ever actually be physically in the room. It can be from early times, way long ago. It can be the truth about a future event. I mean, one thing that bothers people is that the truth is we are going to die. How we go out is unknown. That can bring you fear, or that can bring you peace, or it can bring you something every day that's different, depending on you and what your truth is at the moment. So if reality is all in perception, your perception is how you believe, and that only comes through what you perceive as truth. So the truth is that truth is our angels and it is our demons. It is our time machine. It is the platform that we base all of our decisions on. And that is evidence of our multidimensionality. Animals do not ruminate. They will only manifest mental health issues when they are quarantined or separated from their collective consciousness. I believe that everybody has their own unique frequency, which is, I guess, a form of truth. And then as a species, we have a general frequency that we tap into. Like when you're driving down the road and someone is looking at you and you feel it and you just turn over as almost an instinct. Not a defense necessarily, because there's no emotional reaction to it. It's an acknowledgement of connection, like, yeah, like a knock at the door of some subliminal spot. And I think that's important because a lot of people suffer from low self-confidence because of things in the past that disrupt their ability to create a solid confidence in an activity or in a way to feel or in a way to be. Our personalities are so dynamic and so based on truth that a lot of these personality disorders are actual belief systems. And belief systems is important in any mental disease such as addiction or alcoholism or manic depression. Mania, for example, that is almost like your creative part of your brain takes over and you start believing things that are off the wall. You start accelerating in your energy output. You become manicky and you can believe different things. Patty Duke, for example, went to Washington, D.C. To tell about aliens. She was on a manic high. Very, very common stories of mania being experienced by a lot of people who are celebrities. And celebrity has got to be quite a disassociative thing, to be this to the whole world and still have your own personal truth. And that's why a lot of them die young, because there's an isolation to fame, because everybody thinks of you like this when you're actually that to you, the power of truth. I believe that truth changes for you as you grow. I think that things that you thought happened to you when you were a kid that were okay might not be. Things that you made a big deal out of might not, in the big picture, seem like they were that much of an infraction. But it's the truth that causes what I would call a parallel dimension is created between you and other people in many situations on a daily basis. You know, there's an appropriate way to use that. When you respect someone's boundaries and you let them have their opinion, You may not agree on your truth. Republicans and Democrats, for example, you know, both have different beliefs and truths, but they both do have one truth, and that there is a president they should worry about. In many cases, that similarity or that natural connection is just taken for granted, and people focus on the dissonance or the disruption between the frequencies that they are. And I think that's important to look at in terms of multidimensionality. I can barely say that. Multidimensionality is the ability to be multiple places at once and have emotional reactions and experience. For example, I sat on the bus, and I was on the bus, and my body was experiencing the bus ride. But I was looking out the window, and I was daydreaming, and I was in another reality. I was in a different dimension. Behind me, a lady got into a fight with her boyfriend, and they started duking it out. That reality didn't exist to me, but it was happening, and I was unaware of it. So when they walked past me, the fight was over, and they got off the bus, and I had a feeling that something had happened. I didn't fully believe that anything had happened until the lady next to me started asking me how audacious I thought they were, and I didn't notice. So that didn't happen to me. I didn't experience that. I didn't feel indignant about it, but the lady next to me did. She had experienced something that obviously upset her, and I was physically witness, but not mentally. I think that's an important thing to look at in terms of when we speak about recovery, because your experiences may not be the same for everybody who was around you at the time that the experience happened. And you see that in many, many different types of abuse. It's actually a form of abuse. I believe it's called gaslighting. But these are all topics that we'll get into in the merits of finding your truth. So in finding your truth, you're going back over your life. It's reflection of the past that you're going to look at in terms of how it's affecting your present day and made you who you are. And that can be very, very effective to what you plan to do or plan to become, or how you move through your life and what script you write down. So examining the black part is very, very important, because it's all of your potentials, it's the things that you've done, it's everything that is informative about you when you write the script of your life. It's essentially your truth. It is who you are, your soul. Your experience in this world and your emotional evaluation of everything that's ever happened to you, down to this video and experiencing maybe nothing at all, or maybe something resonates, or maybe you say, oh, there's something here I need to listen to. That is called a synchronicity. And that happens somewhere in your chest. And you feel something. And the truth resonates. That's what that is. And I think that that feeling also can become a source of anxiety attacks, because when you ignore your truth, it starts to burn brighter inside you. It starts to shake you. It starts to tell you, you need to listen to me. Why aren't you listening to me? Your soul is screaming at you. You're going to die while you're sitting there in a booth. That is your truth. That is your body saying something's not right. Something's not addressed. Something needs to come to the surface. And in today's life, we live mundane lives. We don't cultivate anything of our soul. We ignore it. We think that we put pictures of it on Facebook. We deprive our soul of its food, which is joy. You ask people today, what's your source of joy? Most people say money or time off, which is work or time away from work. Yeah, we trade our money in for time, and our time is our life, and that becomes our truth. And we spend our life trying to maintain a semblance of happiness under these situations that are truthfully strange. At this point in our society, and I am a firm believer that we are not the first civilization that has existed on this planet, but there's a recurrent pattern of people working. Why that is, I don't know. But there was a time when people lived, like say the Native Americans, in a system that was more social. And I don't mean socialist, I mean social. Everybody was family. Even though they weren't bloodlines, they were family. And I think that part of the problem is that everyone has beliefs. And we believe that we're connected. But we also revel in the fact that we can make ourselves believe we're not. Business, work, you have to make different decisions. When you fire somebody, you're taking away their livelihood. But you're doing something for the benefit of a company. I know this. I was HR at one of the largest companies in the world. And I wouldn't do that of my own free nature, especially when I know things about people. I know their truths. I know that this person that I had to fire was oversleeping and being late all the time because they were now a single father. But there's this thing called the metrics, the policies, the truths of the business. The numbers and the money and all of that takes precedent over what I feel is right. But that's how I have to survive. So the truth is that we live in a world that contorts truth. Look at the law. You know, how people look at the truth in a situation and the dynamics that make it similar to a situation and how it was ruled upon will be the template for how every event that can be made to seem similar, if they can prove it in court. The truth is subjective. And that's a very hard thing when you think it's black and white. An example, who started the fight? He hit me first. There's two very different truths that make a very big difference in court. And until they can get to the bottom of it, it's speculation. But if somebody says, oh, I saw it, and they didn't, it becomes a legal truth. This person goes down unjustly when the other person could have been the one who threw the punch. So, I mean, there's truths you have to be aware of. There's truths that are dangerous. There are truths that are powerful beyond recognition. People get killed over the truth. Your truths are just as important to your well-being. The secrets you hold will determine the sickness you have. People say that you're only as sick as your secrets. Secrets, we believe as truths. Otherwise, we wouldn't hold them to ourselves. And that is a very important thing to remember in trying to recover from something. If you're sitting on a tack and you are complaining about your, butt hurting, but you know you're sitting on a tack and you're going through the motions, that's going to create a mental disease. What do they call that? Munchausen's? When it gets discovered, oh, I just found this tack. I'm the hero in my story now. But you were sitting on the tack because you put it there. Maybe it was all for attention. But these are all how the truths can bind up into a lie. The pain didn't come from the tack, even though it did. The pain came from the lack of attention that would make a person want to sit on a tack. So truths can exist simultaneously. And these are all important dynamics to remember when we talk about your specific truth. You can't get support from somebody who didn't think they wronged you because their belief is wrong. And you damn sure can't get support from people who won't believe your truth or won't add to it or won't partake in any aspect of truth in their reality because it might connect to yours. I've lost many friends because I was a drug addict and an alcoholic. The truth about me did not align with the truth for them. And that truth sucks, but you know what? I really do think the truth when it comes to people is that we have varying degrees of sensitivity. We have varying lenses that we wear when we look at ourselves and the world around us. We come from different places and perspectives that put us in different emotional geography from other people. You know, some people are up on a mountain where they can see all the world, and some people are down in the death valleys of our society, and their experience is completely different. You know, Marie Antoinette let them eat cake. She actually thought that cake was available. The peasants are dying because they have no bread. You know, her truth was very limited, and as a result, she was beheaded. Was she wrong? She said, let them eat cake. There was just no cake. But she was a young, very well insulated from the reality or the truth of French society at that time. And she suffered from that during the bourgeois revolt. They beheaded her because of what truth they believed in. She had no idea. So I think it's the truth that we all have beheaded ourselves by believing some nonsense or trusting a feeling or an impulse that wasn't true to our nature. And that's when we get into being true to yourself, because what you need to do in your life to recover can sometimes be a very lonely thing, and you'll share that truth and you'll carry that truth, and it'll burn inside you like the candle to keep the darkness away, because when you give your truth up, that lets the darkness in. And I am not a first-time winner in recovery. I grew up in a situation where everybody else's truth was more important than mine because their truth is theirs. I never thought mine was that important until I realized I didn't know what it was. And so I want to put it out there that it is vital to anything. If you're listening to this video because you had a night and things didn't go as well as you did, or if you relapsed, or if you did something bad to someone and lied about it, don't beat yourself up. Look at your truth. Figure out where your belief system is wrong. A lot of the times we have character defects or shortcomings that make us believe that we're entitled. We believe that someone did us wrong over things that we're actually very sensitive about, because when you feel deprived of oxygen, you struggle. When you feel deprived of truth, you act. It's the same thing. You're going to make everyone around you believe in one way or the other. You're going to change the energy in the room. The truth will be heard. And if not, then you try to run from it. And that's where addiction gets bad, because sometimes people are more willing to run than they are to turn around and face their fear. And fear is another element of truth that I think is very interesting, because it can't exist in the face of a real truth. I mean, there's fear and faith, and they cannot exist in the same room, to be more exact. And that's why truth is so vital. It feeds, it powers, it gives you faith. Faith that everything will be all right when you can't see that is a belief, because belief means to be blind. To have faith. When you can't see a solution, but you have faith that it will be okay, it normally works out. Why? Because you sit still and that the world moves around you, and your faith aligns you up with what's coming to you, which is just down the road. But you're not using your free will to try to change the currents that you project into the future and may or may not see. It's a mismanagement of truth. When the truth is, do nothing. If you messed up and you're watching this video because do nothing, watch this video. Think about the truth. Think about yourself. Think about the emotional charge that you're feeling, because that emotional charge is what you will manifest in your life. If you know you were wrong, but you're just salty because of it, that's a real feeling. That's a truth. And that's okay. You are allowed to feel whatever your body feels. But if it's a pattern and it's a truth that you see as unhealthy, then that's also a part of you, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. It is your truth. And this is why it's so important for me to open up with truth, because honesty, hope, All of these wonderful inherited things come from truth. Grace, that is the end result. And from grace comes joy. And joy is the theme of living. It's the theme of living well. I do believe when all of our lies are taken away and we have aligned ourselves with our truths and with ourself, our natural state, unencumbered, is joy, because it'll make us love our lives. And that is a truth. Some of us aren't emotionally available people. Some of us have walls. Some of us don't believe in a God, or we hate God because religion has tarnished the way that we look at it. Your truth and what you believe in has power over you and your future. Or you can wield that power through belief and hand-tailoring your truth to your needs. Your needs are your truth. The black part that we don't like, the script that we wrote that we wish we didn't, the things that got you into a place of captivity, feeling imprisoned in yourself, that cage, that written judgment, that snare around your leg, that is the only way you'll be free, is by removing that. You can't cut off a piece of yourself. We do that, but it just regenerates in a more mutated and deformed form. You know? And I think that that's a truth. And so I give you that, because truths are tools, they're gifts, they are a perception you can wield to catalyze change. And this is going to be important when you come to the personal questions that the steps to recovery are going to require you to do. It's not hard. It's simple. But you have to read the black part. And there's a lot of help, a lot of literature, a lot of truth in certain books. Knowledge passed down from the ancient times. Even the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has truths in it that come from places thousands of years old. There's something called Solomon's Ladder, which is essentially an ancient rite of exorcism. And I think it's so funny that we call alcohol spirits, you know, because the process is the same, which I'll get into that when I go through and introduce the steps. But you can also see addressing the soul through certain questions and reality changing perspectives in the Vedas, especially in the Upanishads, in this class of texts called the Sutras. And what's special about these is that they're super ancient and supposedly penned by deities. And they're thousands of years before Christ. Very old society. And there's tons of wisdom there. And, you know, through the Knights Templars and things, a lot of these mystery schools were passed down into a lot of things. The Masonic Temple has the 33 degrees, Masons, which that has a education in a lot of just common sense and moral and ancient wisdom that's not given freely to the public. So, in writing your truth, it has a lot to do with your perception of your reality, where it comes from, where you want it to go, what your gifts are, what you yourself did emotionally, physically, and projectively wrong to someone else or to yourself, and the things that you did that you might have been under the influence of. Because I don't really think that when you're not inside your body that you can really hold yourself accountable for the moral decision. I think that you're responsible for the outcome, but when people are blacked out, there is another person in there, and the rationale is anesthetized. And so I don't like people to beat themselves up. I mean, there are situations that suck where people, you know, get into DUIs and a family is destroyed, and that is really, really horrible. That is a horrible situation, and I never ever would want to minimize that loss. but I wouldn't want to add to it too. And I think that forgiveness has to be based on truths that are going to allow you to do so. The truth is, I personally don't think that I would be able to survive that myself if I ever killed anybody during my times from a DUI. But I did think about those things. It took me many years to understand that my pain was not worth more than another person's life. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I realized that. And it let me see how selfish I was and how much I believed a different truth, which was that I needed to escape myself, that I couldn't turn and hug myself and tell myself, let's do something about this. I felt hopeless. I felt powerless. And that's important because in step 1, the black part says we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And that powerlessness and mismanageability is a truth that every person who's watching this video is aware of. And we'll get into that when we start our steps. So the truth is, I'm very grateful that you're here. If you like what I'm saying, subscribe and press like, and I will give you more. Thank you for taking the opportunity to check out the channel. Oweteegee is very, very gracious, and we could not have this show without you.